Hello and welcome to tSQLt Live DevOps Edition. If you are looking to learn more about DevOps, Data Platform DevOps, or DevSecOps, you have come to the right place. In this video series, I am talking about what DevOps is, why it is important, how to get started, and also some more advanced topics. So no matter where you are in your DevOps journey, there's something for you in here. Today's topic is DevOps testing essentials. And what I'm going to talk about is really what are the different types of testing you should do and where in the DevOps process do they live or should they live. And today I'm going to talk about all the types of tests that should come before deployment. So before deployment, you have unit tests. We have talked about unit tests in several other episodes already. Unit tests are there to test small units of your code in isolation. Then you also have acceptance tests and integration tests. Both acceptance tests and integration tests are very similar. They test the entire system, basically end to end, or at least larger portions of the system. And in particular, acceptance tests are written based on the criteria that your stakeholders or your end users provide. So an acceptance test is there to prove that the system not only behaves as expected, but actually provides a functionality that is desired by the stakeholder or end user. Acceptance tests also test that everything works in concert, that the pieces are connected to each other correctly, and that is also the point of integration tests. If you have a good suite of acceptance tests, you probably can get away without writing specific integration tests. But either way, both of them should live before or should get executed before deployment. Then you have performance tests. Performance tests are special in that you need to execute them in an environment that mimics production. So while it says before deployment here, they also you need to deploy the code to that environment first. So really before deployment means before deployment to production. If you remember the life cycle, the DevOps life cycle, you have your phase where you're doing the coding, then you have a CI phase, and then you have a deployment phase. And in that, the CD phase. And in the deployment phase, you might deploy to production, but before that, you deploy to other environments. And the performance environment, the performance testing environment, is one of them. So to execute your performance test, you go through the entire CI/CD cycle, but still you execute it before going to production. And all the tests that you're seeing here on this slide are fully automated. That includes these performance tests. So you should write your performance tests in a way that they can be automatically executed. Then you have static code analysis that actually should happen very early, probably at check-in time, definitely at merge time. And you also have chaos engineering. Chaos engineering is a process that is more generally more used in a infrastructure environment. So if you think about infrastructure as code, does this all behave the way I expect it to? And chaos engineering introduces random hardware faults, but you can also use chaos engineering in a way. There are tools that offer that in unit tests. And that works in that those tools change random pieces of code and make sure that there is a unit test that catches that change. So they, for example, might change a random greater sign in the code to a greater equal sign, and then raise an alarm if there is no unit test that fails after that change was made. Those tools are very calculation intensive, but if you can find one for your language, you definitely should employ it. These are the tests that are fully automated that should be executed before deployment. You also have security tests. Security should be not an afterthought in any development process. But there are some security tests that you can automate, and you should think about policy as code. Make sure that that part works as designed. But also you have things like penetration tests, and even those can be partially automated, but you also want to get at some point in the cycle a pen tester, a skilled person in there to find security flaws. And I place this as before deployment. There's certainly some part of that that needs to happen after deployment, where you can set up, for example, a bug bounty program to get external security researchers to do security tests for you. But security is still your responsibility. So some of those security tests, automated as well as manual, should happen before you deploy to production. You also have graphical user interface tests. Some of those can be automated with tools like Selenium. Others need to be executed manually. Either way, they need to happen or should happen before deployment to production. You have usability tests. Is this user interface, does this actually make sense, or is it confusing users? Those are fully and should be fully manual, because you need to get people like your actual end users to use the platform and figure out, is it usable, is it understandable? Those tests also should happen before you deploy. But also after you deploy, you can then do some, and those after deployment, those tests can be automated again. You should figure out if the change you just deployed caused some features to not be used anymore. But today we are talking about before deployment. So once the tool, the product you're writing, is kind of working, you should get end users to try it out and report back. And that's really what I mean with usability tests here. And finally, you have exploratory testing, which is also manually. If all the other tests are developed, implemented well, and are covering your product, your source code, then your QA team now has time to actually try and break the software. And that's what I call exploratory testing. And that, again, is fully manual. Those, how many are that? 9, 10? 10 types of tests is what I think you should execute before deploying to production every time. Every time you should do those tests. With maybe the exception of the usability test, maybe you can do that less frequent than every time, but everything else should be executed every time before you deploy to production. And that is all I had for you today. There are 2 more phases during deployment and after deployment, and I will talk about those in a later video. Thank you for showing up. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. If you liked what you saw and would like to see more content like this, please subscribe. And yeah, thanks for watching and have a fabulous day.